In the not-so-distant past, we talked about doing best versus just doing right. But I want to take a step away from that a little bit and just talk about doing right. We live in a society now that I'm not even asking them to do what's best. I'm just asking them to do right. Hey, Mr. President, don't just do what's best. Just do what's right. Hey, Governor, don't just do what's best. Do what's right. Elected officials, do what's right. We need parents that will just commit to do what's right. Young people that will commit to do what's right. Grandparents that will commit to do what's right. Pastors that will commit to do what's right. Churches that will commit to do what's right. The United Methodist Church as a denomination recently committed to do all that is wrong. May God not let it happen to this church. We just need people to do what's right. And that should be our endeavor this morning. Now I wonder, and I don't know if I should ask for a show of hands or not. In your pursuit of doing what's right, have you found that sometimes it can be difficult? It's said that if doing right was easy, everybody would be doing right. My intent was to talk to our teenagers this morning about this, but I was providentially hindered from being in their class. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I was going to give them an unpleasant truth, but it's just as true for us too. When you have those moments in which it's difficult to do right, I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't get easier as you age. I'd like to tell you that you reach a point in life where just doing right just comes natural. But it doesn't. In fact, it could be argued that it gets more difficult to do what's right. And I think there's a number of reasons. Could I give you three? Could I give you three just to consider? Well, I just gave you the title. Forget what you saw. Sometimes it's more difficult to do what's right because of influence. You see, as you get older, the older you get, the more influences come into your life. And as you get older, your resolve to stay the course can weaken as you accumulate more associates who are not doing right. As you get surrounded by more and more people who are not doing right, it makes it that much easier for you not to do right. That influence kicks in. Sometimes it's because we have a lack of insight. It's not just the influence, it's a lack of insight. The pervasive wrongness of our culture vexes righteous people so that the distinctions between right and wrong get more and more blurry. Back in the 50s, if you saw somebody run across the screen with no clothes on, my goodness, the network would be fined and people would go to jail and that show would never see the light of day again. But that's common occurrence on TV now. And Christians watch it. The lines have gotten blurred, haven't they? I mean, you remember in the old days? And yes, I'm starting to get to the point where I have old days. Lucy and Desi slept in separate beds. By the way, I don't recommend that for a married couple. But on TV, they slept in separate beds. What's very interesting is at the time I Love Lucy was on the air, they were really married in real life. And they still made them sleep in separate beds. Now some of you say, well, preacher, as you get older, you see the value of that. Maybe. But now, all sorts of stuff you see on television that not only is allowed, it's celebrated as being progressive and true to life. The lines are getting blurrier, aren't they? It used to be that if you taught a kid that 2 + 2 = 4, that was right. Now, it is apparently wrong. And not only is it wrong, it's xenophobic to say that. If I'm lying, I'm dying, y'all. that if you really believe that 2 and 2 is 4, and you force your truth on somebody else, you hate humanity. What? And we've lost our insight, haven't we? Sometimes it's because of influence, sometimes it's because of insight, and sometimes it's because we're impaired. Each time that we don't choose to do the right, we weaken ourselves and make it harder to do it in the future. And we become morally, just like if you were to drink, your judgment becomes impaired. Well, the more we allow wrong to enter into our life, the more we become morally impaired. The point is, right now, wherever you are in your life, whether you're a teenager, whether you're a young adult, whether you're a parent, whether you're a grandparent, it doesn't matter. Right now, wherever you are in life, it is imperative that right now, during this message, I'm not even saying going home and thinking about it. I'm saying right now, before you leave the pew upon which you're sitting, before you leave the couch you're sitting at watching this online, or leave your workstation, or wherever you're watching this, before you cut off the broadcast, before you walk out of this building, it is imperative that we purpose, by God's grace, to establish our biblical convictions and always choose to do right. Bob Jones Sr. famously said, "Do right till the stars fall." Do right. But doing right is rarely easy. And we are going to be tempted over and again to go against that which is right. And as it happens, when you're faced with these temptations, it helps to make some careful consideration of some realities. So when you are faced with a situation in which you must choose the right versus the wrong, may God help us to consider what to do and what to consider, really, when doing right gets hard. When doing right gets hard. This is the kind of message that you teach to teenagers, as though they're the only ones that have to face the hard challenges of doing right. No, I think the parents need to hear it too. I think the grandparents need to hear it. I think their pastor needs to hear it. I think the teachers need to hear it. I think the Sunday school teacher needs to hear it. I think the youth leader needs to hear it. I think their neighbors need to hear it. I think we all need to hear it, because we all are going to encounter these times in which doing right gets hard. I am burning up, y'all. Amen. Finally, I have an ally in this room. Because whatever the temperature is down there, this is scientifically proven. It is 47 degrees hotter up here. It is right now 112 degrees on this platform. And I really think cutting it down would be to do what's right. But, yeah, the one in the video booth up there, he's having a great time up there. I've seen him bring out stuff twice up there. Huh. Oh, Lord, get me back on point. When doing right gets hard. Amen. He was crying earlier. I thought he was under conviction. I'm faced with a decision, and I'm tempted to not choose the right. What should I consider when it's hard to do right? Number one, I need to consider my duty. I need to consider my duty. Now remember the verse that we read, Proverbs 20, verse number 11. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. We are judged. We are seen. We are known by whether or not we do right. Would you go to 2 Timothy chapter 2? 2 Timothy chapter 2. If I am looking and I am considering from the perspective of what is my duty, here's the question I'm asking myself. As I make this decision, I am asking myself regarding my duty, who is my Lord? Who is my Lord? 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1. Paul speaking to Timothy, and by extension to all of us, he says, "Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also." Verse 3. "Thou therefore endure hardness as a good" what? "Soldier of Jesus Christ." It's that old song. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. Yeah. Ephesians 6 talks about the armament that we should be wearing, the armor rather. We have a duty. He goes on to say in verse number 4, "No man that warreth entangle himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier." You see, one's sense of duty depends on that person understanding that there is something or someone that is higher than themselves. And our sense of duty erodes when we elevate ourselves above God and above others He's put in our life. The reason some Christians have no sense of duty is because they're number one in their life. And when you don't answer to somebody, when you don't answer to something higher than yourself, then duty goes away. But we ought to have a sense of duty. When a soldier fights for their country under the best of circumstances, I'm sorry to say this isn't always the case, but in most cases, a soldier fights for others. They're not there for their personal benefit. They are there because their country needs them to be there. There is something higher than them. We had the opportunity when we were in D.C. a little while ago to watch the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. There's a sense of duty that is displayed there. The things that these folks give up just to be tomb guards. It's incredible. The structure and the rigidity of their lives. They stand guard. I read an interesting story about a hurricane was coming through, and for the first time probably ever, the guard was given permission to leave the post for the sake of their safety, and the guard said no. There's a sense of duty. Well, Christians, when we understand that there is someone higher than us, and that there is a cause that is higher than us, it elevates our sense of duty. Hey, dads, maybe we're not the best at teaching our kids. I couldn't teach my son how to fix a car. I never learned that. I can teach him how to throw a decent knuckleball, probably. I learned a little bit about that. But I couldn't teach him how to frame out a house. I never learned that. I'm not the most athletic guy. There's all kind of things I can't do. But I tell you what should motivate me. I have a duty to my kids to do all I can to bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. And it just bothers me to no end when I see people that have obligations to others just shirk that duty as though it's nothing. Whether it's a parent, whether it's somebody, just anybody in authority. Our young people, now don't get me wrong, I love our young people with all of my heart, but if nothing else, I have a duty to them to choose to do what is right. Because if I shirk that duty and I choose the wrong, it affects them all. Consider your duty. I'll tell you what else. Consider the dangers. When I am faced with a decision, I'm either going to do right or I'm going to do wrong. I need to consider my duty, but I also need to consider the dangers. If my duty asks, who is my Lord? The dangers ask, what will this levy? What's a levy? A levy is a tax or a cost. So we could put it this way. What is this going to cost? This decision that I'm about to make, if I choose the wrong, what is this going to cost me? Twice in Proverbs, we see the same verse, Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12. A prudent man foreseeth the evil. That means he sees the cost down the road. He foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. When we fail to see the dangers down the road of our choices, it usually comes down to two applications. Number one is unrecognized risks. There are risks that we do not recognize. Just because we don't think there is a risk doesn't mean we shouldn't protect against it anyway. I've used this analogy a lot. As I stand before you, God knows my heart. I truly do not believe that there is any woman under the sound of my voice that has any interest in me whatsoever in an improper way. One of the great advantages that God has given me in my dealings with women has been that I am just not the guy that women chase after. It may be hard to believe looking at me, but I am just not the guy that women chase after. I never have been. So that's an advantage. It's a help. But if I truly believe that, and I do, does that mean that I have no responsibility to guard against the dangers that could be down the road? Because if you just look around this world and you look at some of the men that have got women, there's some women with some pretty low standards out there. Thankfully, my wife was one of them. And the devil is a master at orchestrating the right person in the right place at the right time, or we could say the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. So why do I have a big picture window in my office? Why do I have policies and procedures that I follow and how I deal with ladies? Why? Is it because I think I'm something? No, it's because I've learned over the years that I need to be prepared for the dangers that I don't even necessarily think are out there, but I need to be ready in case they are. People made a mockery of Billy Graham when he talked about how he would always send somebody in a hotel room ahead of him. I mean, he was at the peak of his ministry, and it was not unheard of that somebody would try to frame him. Did it ever happen? I don't know that it ever did, but maybe that's because he saw the danger and put something in place to keep it from happening. Risks get infinitely more treacherous when we relax. I want you to hear this statement because we're going to say it a couple of times. My relaxation can become another's ruin. My relaxation can become another's ruin. Now, are there times that relaxation's okay? Yes. Every year, Brother Davies and I sit down, and usually we bring the school board in, and we look at the handbook, and we see, is there anything here that's no longer value added? Now, we're not talking about scriptural things. We're not talking about doctrine. We're talking about procedural things. Is there anything here that just isn't serving the purpose that it once did? And so over the years, we have made some changes. We have relaxed some things. But there's some things that, while they may not be an issue of morally right versus wrong, we don't relax them because we see something down the road that's going to be a problem. You know? Watch out for unrecognized risks. You know the verse. Be sober, be vigilant, 1 Peter 5:8, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. And we read that verse and we say, I've got to be sober. I've got to be vigilant because the devil's after me. But that's not what the verse says. It doesn't make the distinction that he's just after you. He's after whoever he can devour. So if I'm not sober and I'm not vigilant, it may not mean that he gets me. It may mean that he gets my kids. It may mean that he gets somebody in my congregation. It may mean he gets one of our students, because we stopped being sober and vigilant, because we started seeing unrecognized risks. I'll tell you another danger. It's not just unrecognized risks, but unintended results. Congress is a pro at failing to see unintended results. Think of all the laws that have been passed that they didn't see where it would lead, or maybe they did and didn't want us to see it. Unintended consequences, you could put it that way. And we need to think about these things. When faced with the temptation to do wrong, we often fail to look down the road. We tend to think in what I call levels of wrongness. Well, this isn't that bad, and this isn't that horrible. There's no such thing as levels of wrongness. Everything has the potential for an unintended consequence. When we're staring at our phone or our computer screen, when we're selecting something on Netflix, when we're debating as to whether or not we should attend church, when we're giving in to a child's unwise desire, all of these have the potential for unintended consequences. No decision goes without some consequence, because remember, relaxation can become another's ruin. The perfect example for this is Lot. Lot was in the most advantageous family he could be in. He was in Abram's family. And God had blessed Abram. And Abram comes to Lot and he says, our workers aren't getting along. We got plenty of room here. You take one side of the property. I'll take the other side. You choose. And what do we see? Genesis 13, verse 10, and Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. Big deal. Oh, it was a big deal. Because every morning when he got up and he opened the flap of his tent, what did he see? Sodom. Why? Because he didn't see the unintended results. I don't think there was anything in Lot when he chose the side that he chose. I don't think there was anything in Lot that said, yep, I'm about to go ruin my family. But he sure did. Because what happens next? Genesis 14, verse 11. These marauders come in, and they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. And they took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom. So what's happened? He's gone from looking toward Sodom. Now he dwells in Sodom. And then Genesis 19, verse 1. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. He's gone from looking toward Sodom to living in Sodom, and now he's one of the lawgivers at Sodom. He's on the city council. Ultimately, Lot lost his wife and all but two daughters, who eventually evolved themselves in something unspeakably wicked. And Lot died in disgraceful exile. Why? Because he failed to see the dangers of unintended results. Every decision we make, we must see the potential dangers. Yeah, but Lot was a wicked man. No, he wasn't. 2 Peter 2, verse 7, and God delivered just. That doesn't mean only, it means just as in righteous. God delivered just or righteous Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked, for that righteous man dwelled among them. Lot's in heaven today, y'all. We've got to get better at recognizing unintended consequences, for therein lie many of the greatest dangers. Man, I'm faced with a decision, and doing right's getting harder and harder and harder. Then you better consider your duty, and you better consider the dangers, and then thirdly, you better consider the direction. Every decision leads in a direction. If my duty asks who is my Lord, and the dangers ask what will be the levy, then the direction asks where will this lead? Where does this decision take us? I have had this conversation so many times, and thankfully most of the time it turns out fine. Oh, preacher, I got a job opportunity, and I'm telling you, it's going to be great. The pay's great. The benefits are great. The neighborhoods are great. Okay, where's the closest church? I don't know. What kind of a spiritual climate is there? I don't know. We'll figure out something. And you got to ask yourself, what direction are you taking your family? It is so important to let God determine your trajectory. If you aim at a fixed point and you're off just a fraction, the farther that goes, the farther away it gets from that fixed point. That's how geometry works. And I may be just a hair off. People would look at me and say, man, what a godly decision. But if it's not God's decision, and there is a difference between what people perceive to be a godly decision and what is truly God's decision. That's why Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Where will this decision lead my direction? Where does this take me? Where does this take my family? I got a decision ahead of me. It's getting harder to do right. You need to consider your duty. Who is my Lord? You need to consider the dangers. What will this levy? You need to consider the direction. Where will this lead? And here's what it all comes down to. Consider your devotion. Who's my Lord? What will this levy? Where will this lead? But fundamentally, here's what it is. Who do I really love? Who has my devotion? And this is the fundamental issue at hand. Duty is a great motivator. The dangers are a great motivator. Direction is a great motivator, but there is no higher motivator for the decision to do right than to do it for love. You remember in John chapter 21? Jesus has yet again miraculously provided fishes for the disciples. They come to the beach, they're eating. Peter has got to be dealt with. Christ has forgiven him, but he needs to be dealt with. He needs to be reset, if you will. He's denied Christ 3 times and all that goes with that. What does Jesus say to him in John chapter 21 that gets to the root of his bad decision? He does not say, Peter, what were you thinking? Peter, did you consider the dangers? Did you consider the direction? Did you consider your duty? He doesn't say any of those things. 3 times he says the same thing. What does he say? Do you love me, Peter? Because that was the fundamental problem with your decision, Peter, is you didn't love me like you should. And I've had so many occasions in my life where I go to God because I made the wrong decision. And I say, oh, Lord, I messed up. And it always comes back to the same point. I didn't love you like I should. Because if I love Jesus like I should, I don't make that decision. if I love my wife like I should, I don't make that particular decision. If I love my kids like I should, I don't make that decision. If I love my church like I should, I don't make that decision. See, here's where we mess up. We try to do to prove our love, instead of asking God to deepen our love that we might do. Do you see the difference? Let me try to give you an analogy. This morning, throughout this day, I have not met up with any woman in an illicit way who's not my wife. Well, of course not, Andy. You shouldn't. That's right. I shouldn't. But do you think that I got up this morning and the first thing I did is, okay, I am not going to flirt with any women. I am not going to reach out to any women. I am not going to talk to any women. I am not going to this. I'm not going to. And then maybe my wife will know I love her. Is that how it works? No. I'll tell you what I do. I get up. I get ready for church. And I kiss my wife. And I tell her I love her. Because I do. And that is what motivates me to go out and do right. Now listen, let me be clear. I'm not standing here telling you I've got this thing licked and that I don't need to be careful. God knows my heart. Always walk circumspectly. But I'm saying when you love someone, when you love something deeply, that's what drives you to choose the right. And I think maybe what we should do is, instead of spending a lot of time on trying to figure out what's best for our church and what's best for our family and what's best for me and what's best for this, maybe we get up in the morning and we say, oh God, thank you for how good you've been to me. And Lord, I love you, but I need to love you more. And I need to love you more deeply. And I need to love you more fervently. And I need to love you more broadly. And Lord, if I go into this life loving you with all that I have and all that I am, that will be what keeps me doing right. They asked Jesus, what was the greatest commandment? What did he say? Go to church, be baptized, dress right, tote your King James that didn't exist yet. Nope. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. Then the next one, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I know this makes me sound like Osteen, y'all. But it all begins and ends with love. Love. I want to do right. The best, most effective way for me to do right is to love God with everything that's in me. And he'll help you do that. Who do you love? Oh, Andy. I get faced with decisions all the time, and it gets tougher and tougher because of the influences and the insight and the impairment that happens in my life. So what do I do? Well, what's your duty? Who is your Lord? Who do you answer to? What are the dangers? Look at what happens with this decision. What will be your direction? Where will it lead? And then really the big thing, where's your devotion? Who do you love? Because that's the greatest weapon, the greatest tool for when doing right gets hard. Let's stand with our heads bowed and our eyes closed, please.